Have you ever had the feeling that something was about to happen just moments before it actually did? A subtle, internal warning that arrived without logic, without proof, without explanation, yet felt impossibly real in your body and impossible to ignore in your mind. A sudden chill running through your spine, a pressure in your chest, a quiet but firm inner signal, telling you not to go, not to trust, or to move right now, even when every rational argument tells you there is no reason to feel that way at all. Most people learn to silence this feeling over time. Some people swear it saved their life, and a very small number of scientists tried to understand it seriously before their work mysteriously faded into obscurity. What if I told you that the so-called sixth sense is not mystical, not spiritual, and not imaginary, but something that was actually studied under controlled scientific conditions, funded by serious institutions, documented with real data, peer-reviewed by professionals, and then quietly pushed out of the spotlight? What if I told you there were experiments so uncomfortable in their implications that the easiest solution was not to debate them, but to stop talking about them entirely? Today you're about to hear about the research you were never meant to hear about, the experiments that made respected scientists uneasy, the results that refused to fit into existing models of reality, and the deeper reason why this subject still creates resistance whenever it is brought up in academic or public discussions. Because once you truly understand what was discovered, you can never look at intuition or inner knowing the same way again. For decades, mainstream science treated the idea of a sixth sense as a joke, a superstition, a cognitive illusion created by chance and memory bias, something to be dismissed rather than explored. Yet behind closed laboratory doors, a very different story was unfolding. During the 1970s and 1980s, a group of neuroscientists, psychologists, and physicists began asking a question that challenged the foundations of perception itself. What if the human brain can receive information before it consciously happens, not as a prediction, not as a guess, but as actual incoming data? This was never about psychic powers or fantasy. It was about time, perception, and the boundaries of consciousness. One of the earliest and most unsettling clues came from a deceptively simple experiment where participants were shown a rapid sequence of images on a screen, most of them emotionally neutral, like everyday objects or landscapes, while a small percentage were emotionally disturbing and designed to provoke fear or shock. What shocked researchers was not how people reacted to the disturbing images, but when they reacted seconds before the disturbing image appeared. Participants' bodies responded, showing measurable changes in heart rate, skin conductivity, and nervous system activity, even though their conscious minds had no possible way of knowing what was coming next. There were no warning signs, no predictable patterns, and no sensory cues, yet the body reacted anyway. At first, researchers assumed equipment malfunction, statistical coincidence, or flawed methodology, so they repeated the experiment across different labs, with different teams in different countries using stricter controls. The results remained the same. The body reacted before the event. This phenomenon became known as presentiment, a term carefully chosen to avoid sensationalism, describing the body's physiological response to a future stimulus that had not yet occurred. And that was the moment things became deeply uncomfortable, because if presentiment was real, it meant time might not function the way we experience it consciously, and the human nervous system might access information beyond linear cause and effect. Some researchers leaned further into this mystery, while others quietly backed away. One of the most controversial figures in this field spent decades studying intuition under tightly controlled conditions, discovering that people often made highly accurate decisions without conscious reasoning, especially under pressure. Firefighters, soldiers, emergency room doctors, and elite athletes consistently reported the same experience. They didn't analyze, they acted, and they were right. When asked how they knew what to do, their answers were strikingly similar, describing an inner certainty, a feeling, or an instinct that bypassed deliberate thought. Science attempted to explain this as subconscious pattern recognition built from experience. But that explanation began to collapse when similar intuitive responses appeared in individuals with no relevant experience at all. Then came the attention of the military. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union invested enormous resources into studying human perception, not just to build better weapons, but to understand the mind as a strategic asset. Remote viewing programs, intuition training, and anomalous cognition research were funded and tested, officially later dismissed as failures, and unofficially left buried under layers of classification. Several scientists involved in these programs later stated that the data itself was real, but the implications were too disruptive to pursue publicly. Because if humans can access information beyond standard sensory input, it challenges assumptions about control, predictability, and authority. A population that trusts its intuition is harder to manipulate, harder to frighten, and harder to program. Modern society systematically trains people to distrust their instincts, to ignore gut feelings, to wait for external validation, and to defer judgment to experts, algorithms, and systems. But intuition was never an accident of evil. It was a survival mechanism. Long before language or logic existed, humans survived by sensing danger, by responding to subtle environmental shifts without conscious analysis. Those who listened survived, and those who didn't were removed from the gene pool. Modern neuroscience confirms that the brain processes massive amounts of information below conscious awareness. Yet this still does not fully explain presentiment, because in those experiments there was nothing to detect in advance. Some physicists proposed a radical possibility that consciousness might not be confined to the present moment, and that the brain could function as a receiver rather than a generator. In quantum physics, time does not behave in a strictly linear way, and effects can precede causes under certain conditions. This doesn't imply magic, but it does imply that our current models may be incomplete. Incomplete models do not attract funding. As attention grew, support quietly disappeared. Journals became hesitant, and careers stalled, not because the research was disproven, but because it asked questions no institution was prepared to answer. Yet the research never truly stopped. Today's intuition is studied aggressively in private sectors like Silicon Valley, where high-level decisions are often guided by instinct rather than data alone. Top executives openly admit behind closed doors that their most important choices come from gut feeling, while the public is told intuition is irrational. Children demonstrate stronger intuitive responses than adults, a sensitivity that fades not because it disappears, but because it is trained out of them through conditioning and social pressure. People are rewarded for logic, punished for feeling, and taught to doubt internal signals. And yet, when things go wrong, the words are always the same. I knew it. I had a bad feeling. I should have listened. The banned research does not claim you are psychic. It suggests your nervous system may be more intelligent than you were taught to believe. It implies intuition is not the opposite of reason, but a parallel channel of information. That channel weakens. Distraction, and constant stimulation, which modern life provides in abundance. Silence strengthens it. Presence sharpens it. And attention brings it back online. The most unsettling part of this research is not what it proves, but what it implies, that human potential is far from fully understood, and that the sixth sense was never lost, only ignored. The real question is not whether the sixth sense exists. The real question is whether you are still listening.